Yeah, believe it or not, we are alive finally on this program, and we're thanks to I don't know what, but the internet did us in tonight. But we're glad to join David. Now look, here's Allie, and we're back together. Sweet and sour is on the air, folks. Can you believe it? Let's do an open and get right to it.
It's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking, but be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
And who said they couldn't do it? Here they are. We're here. Welcome back. Allie, David, good to see you. Thanks for your patience. We've been told about 100 times you're not on the internet. And finally, the 101st time, we clicked it, and here you are. Good to see you, Allie. Good to see you, David. Thanks for being patient. David, I know you probably have a lot of things to say about this topic, and as others have said, and Allie too, the Nick Saban exit interview, which was quite a circus. We'll talk about that a little bit. First, let's talk about the HBC, another award for him, and we had a chance to visit with him here. We'll play a minute of that interview in just a second. But first of all, I put on my show tonight a little tease that said, are we having a run on coaches? Nick Saban says everything he ever believed in went up in smoke this past couple of months, and looks like he's done. And my question would be, number one, what do you think about that, Allie? And secondly, David, who will be next? Allie, what was your reaction to Nick Saban's sort of trashing the players, saying they care about nothing but money?
Honestly, I was not all that surprised because I think these are the things we're hearing from coaches all the time. I've heard this not only from college coaches that I've talked to as well, that are just over NIL and the fact that it's kind of the wild, wild west. I've had a high school coach tell me it is so much harder to get high school players recruited because of the transfer portal, and that dealing with the NIL stuff has become a complete full-time job. And because of the transfer portal, they're having to redo their job multiple times. One coach I talked to said every time the portal opens, he has former players that he played for reaching out to him, asking him where he should transfer to. Can you look at this NIL contract for me? What do you think about this? What do you think I'm valued at? It's created this entire new layer to their coaching job that just didn't exist before.
David, your thoughts about that, and I want to ask you about what Nick's comments were to Senator Cruz, and also his comments about Ms. Terry, saying him all they want is money. I'm sure you read about it, heard about it, and talked about it on Miller and Moulton.
Well, to just pick up where Allie left off, yeah, it's messy, but the courts have made it messy. And the NCAA, by not seeing this coming for 15 years, and no offense, there hasn't been a single one of these prominent coaches that has offered up any form of solution over the last 15 years either. And only now that Nick is retired is Nick complaining and Nick saying something has to be done. By the way, Nick, what is it? I'll hang up and listen. All right. And I'm just curious, is Nick complaining from his $11 million lake house or his $18 million oceanfront home? I'm just curious.
No question about that. That's a valid point, and that's what a lot of people are making. I think we all can say we were for the players getting paid. We just didn't know how they were going to do it, and neither did anybody else apparently. And David, I'll take you.
But I mean, think about it, guys. think about that's 2-3 years. How long has this NIL thing been around? But did they really think? Did they really think when the court said, "Listen, you're going to have to do something," and it said, "Okay, we'll come up with NIL"? Did they really think it was going to be, "Well, we'll give you a little bit of money, and you're going to go to the local car dealer, and you're going to sign autographs, and you're going to appear in court"? Did they really think that? I mean, these guys, in many cases, players have been paid for 60 years. Not all of them, and not all programs. But players have gotten gifts and cash for 60 years. Did we really think we were going to limit it to $10,000, go down to the local Honda dealer a couple of Saturdays a year and pose for pictures and sign autographs? Hell no. Come on. How could they not see this coming?
There's got to be something between what we had and what we have now. Like there's some middle ground. And, you guys know I love Nick Saban. I think that he is incredible. I never bet against him. He has revolutionized college football. But it's ironic to listen to him say these things. We talk about the $10,000 handshakes. Those have existed at Alabama far before NIL existed.
Yes.
I have a family member that played for him, and he'll talk to you about how Saban would put a padlock on the facility and lock them all in so that they could know that the NCAA wasn't watching. I mean, this is somebody who has skirted the rules, or at the very least danced the line for his whole career. So it is ironic now. But I do believe that Nick Saban cares about changing players' lives and that he cares about them growing into better people. And I do think that that is part of the issue that we are dealing with right now, is that nobody sticks around long enough to fight through adversity and come out on the other end a better human being, as somebody that is going to contribute to society once football is over with. And I totally agree with him on that. It's just, I don't know, rich coming from him, I guess.
Oh my goodness, it's very ironic. He talks about wanting competitive balance. When the heck has Nick Saban ever wanted competitive balance?
Exactly.
Why, if you wanted competitive balance, you should have stayed at Michigan State. I mean, come on. I'm sorry. I thought it was, and Allie, I'm with you. Nick is, on the Mount Rushmore of college coaches, and he has changed college football in the 21st century. There's no question about it. But this, to me, is a bad look, and it's hypocritical to the nth degree. And Nick complaining about the players at the end of the year coming to him wanting more money. How many times did he have Jimmy Sexton solicit potential other job offers so that he could go back to Alabama and get a raise? I mean, he used Texas twice. I mean, come on. So Nick's done the same thing. I mean, He really has. He's just done it with an agent, and it hasn't seemed as unseemly.
I'm kind of in between the two of you, and I agree with Allie. I do have great respect for Saban, because I think even though he had plenty of money, I do think he really had the interests of the kids at heart in many ways. And I will say that the comment he made to somebody, I don't know if it was in Washington or before, about how he and Miss Terry always had this recruiting breakfast for the new, Allie, every year, as most coaches do. They have their parents come in, and they talk to them about how they're going to groom their kids and get them educated and all that sort of stuff, the things that, and he at least portended that he was going to take care of their sons, and it's what most coaches like to say. I think he did for the most part. There were some exceptions perhaps, but I will say, when he said, Miss Terry said to me, "Why are we doing this? All they want to know is how much money they can make." Well, it isn't the kids' fault. It's the system's fault. And you're right. We should have done it a long time ago, and we didn't. And we're paying for it now. Or to say we, the game's paying for it. I do think, however, there is one thing, a question. I'll let you guys adjudicate this. The question of values and what this is about, and whether how bad they are, and whether this is hurting the game, etc. I used a quote this morning, that one of my favorite all-time quotes, about people who seem to have no real values in what they do. There was a quote in the London Times one time I read, which I love, said this guy was a guy who knew the price of everything and the value of nothing. Well, that can be said of our American culture, but I do regret the game has changed in some ways, not for the better. I understand when you've done it for 50 years and everything you said you believed in has gone away, how you might not be able to handle it. So you go from there, Allie and David, and to share your thoughts. And will there be somebody else after him? Will Dabo will be next? Who will be next?
Yeah. I mean, I think Urban said it. He said it to you. He said it to me. He wouldn't jump back with what's going on. I mean, I think that you're going to have a new generation of coach that's okay with handling one more ball in the air, essentially, than Saban ever had to before, than Urban had to before, than Dabo wants to. This is a new world. It's not the player's fault that this is where we are right now. And I get it. If I had a kid out there, I would probably tell him to take advantage and get the biggest bag he could too. But I do think it's short-sighted to be solely concerned about money. And it does feel like that's very much, the driving factor right now for how these programs are picked by players. But I think the thing that he said that flew under the radar a little bit that hit me the hardest is Saban said that there's a stat that every time you transfer, the likelihood that you graduate decreases by 20%. And so then you think about these kids that transfer 3 times, 4 times over the course of their career. And then you look at the percentage of how many college athletes actually play professional football. Mm-hmm. What we're creating is a generation of has-beens that won't play in the NFL and don't have a degree to function in the outside world with. And that was kind of the buried lead to me in all the things that he was saying, because that's something, Florida, if you leave for the NFL and you haven't graduated, they let you come back. They pay for you to finish your degree at UF. I don't know that schools are going to be falling all over themselves to help players do that if you spent, a semester and a half there versus 4 or 5 years pouring your blood, sweat, and tears into that field.
There's a lot to that. First off, considering the incredibly small percentage of college athletes that will ever see a day in professional sports, I think you can understand why they're going to get paid now. They're like, I got to get me now. There's no guarantee. In fact, the odds are so stacked. Even though everybody who's playing big-time football thinks they're going to the NFL, the odds are so stacked against them ever seeing one check. So it's another reason why maybe not to blame them when they try to get theirs and get it now in a multi-billion-dollar industry. I would argue this, though, Allie, and while you can't disagree with a single thing you said, I do think there's more academic support for athletes in the last 30 years than there was in all of time leading up to it. I do think that universities have dedicated a lot more resources to academics, and I don't think we have as many Dexter Manley stories in the last generation or so that we had seemingly in the 60s, the 70s, and even into the 80s.
Remind the younger folks who Dexter Manley was, David.
Dexter Manley, I believe it was Oklahoma State, but Dexter Manley graduated functionally illiterate, and he ended up tearfully testifying in the height of his career, and he was a very good defensive lineman for the then Redskins before Congress, and basically he couldn't read the paper that was in front of him when he was like 30 years old. And so I actually think schools are doing far more for athletes now. I think, Allie and Buddy, the question, though, is how many of these kids really want to be going to college anyway, that really they're using colleges to play football as a minor league because that's all they really want to do. They just want to play ball, and then they want to try to get paid in the pros.
Where's the person in their life that's saying, "Hey, listen, 3% of college athletes will play NFL. Have a plan B. It needs to be your degree. You're gonna get it paid for." And you're right. The support that college athletes get is incredible. I can even just think back into when Eric was in college, who was a great student, but his academic advisor met with him every couple of weeks to make sure that he was on track. I know the athletes that maybe struggled a little bit academically had to go to tutoring multiple times a week, like mandatory, to make sure all their homework was done. They were ready for their tests. Their papers were written. Some of them had personal tutors assigned to them that, spent 20 hours a week with them. So I do think all of that support is there, but when you transfer, this course credit doesn't transfer the same when you go to the next school. So now you're behind these hours. I mean, that you can see how that compounds itself. Even when you do have the academic help, you have to take advantage of it. But I don't know. It's astounding to me that there aren't people advising their child, like, yes, let's see what we can get you now, but let's also plan for the future.
I think though that that's not something you can put on the coaches, on the schools,
No,
and on the college football system. That's parenting.
great. Yeah.
And so, that's something that you just have to kind of say, as they say, throw it up to God and just hope that, it ends up okay. I mean, Allie and Buddy, how many colleges boast that their athletic department has a higher GPA than the general student population? A lot of them. There's something about the discipline of an athlete. Now, maybe it's not necessarily football. Okay. Usually a football GPA, you hope the team can get around a 3.0, but the discipline of an athlete in which they then apply it to their studies, and many athletic departments have higher GPAs than the general student population at large.
Yeah, and also, Allie, in fairness, I mean, you were a great parent in what you do. I don't know how you do it, but Urban Meyer used to have a family day every Thursday where they'd have all those players come and eat, and bring their girlfriends or their babies, baby mamas, whatever, because he wanted to show them, and he would bring his wife and family, and they would eat. He wanted to show the players what a family looked like. Well, you're talking about who's there to advise them, who's there to put them to bed at night, who's there to feed them. That's the thing. They're so far beyond that. Some of these kids are. They have nobody at home to advise them, and that's one of the problems. Real quick, David, before I forget about this is a really important point I wanted to make earlier and didn't. Remember, was it 2000, correct me on my dates, I think 2005, when the SEC started winning with championships, I think LSU in Florida. And I talked to your partner, Gary Danielson, on my show one night. And back then, David said, the SEC is in for a hell of a run here. I said, what do you mean? He said, because they've got the coaches and the quarterbacks, and they got the players and whatever. And so he says, I think there's going to be well, who knew the era of dominance would look like this? I mean, incredible. Now suddenly it ended last year with Michigan. It's an amazing run that they've had. And I want to ask you, David, do you think the SEC now, they got Georgia still in there, do you think the SEC is going to, are they going to be dominant, number one? Number two, do they think they're going to have a tough time winning championships?
Well, I don't think it ended because Michigan won the title. I mean, I mean, this SEC run, and Nick and Urban started it. Nick leaving, when Nick left Michigan State for LSU, the industry thought he was nuts. How nobody leaves the Big Ten for the SEC? What are you doing? And he said, trust me, I can get a lot better players at LSU than I can here being the number 2 program at Michigan. And people laughed at him, mocked him. And then look at what he did quickly at LSU. Then Urban comes in with Florida. Nick comes back. And they helped propel the conference to a generation of dominance that I don't know that they'll ever duplicate that again.
Right.
Like, I think if we keep score beginning in 2024 and Allie go to about the mid 2040s, I don't know that they'll have as many national titles as they do now. But also, we're going to 12 or 14 or 16. To think what the SEC did when for the longest time it was 2 and then it was only 4. I mean, we'll never see dominance like that again. But the SEC, top to bottom, is still going to play the best football in the country. I will say, though, the top of the Big Ten is going to be a lot better and deeper than it's been in the last generation. I mean, Oregon has the money to compete in modern college athletics. USC is all in. Obviously Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State are all in. I mean, that's a lot more quality at the top of a conference than the SEC has had to face during this generational dominance.
But nothing like this, Allie, ever again.
I mean, listen, we just witnessed, 25 years essentially of SEC dominance. I think that David's right. I don't think we have, we're not going to see that duplicated. It's almost astounding to look back. And I saw a stat the other day that said Nick Saban either won or was beaten for every national championship for like the past 15 years or whatever the stat was. It was something insane when you think about like how those teams got there. Either they beat Alabama to get themselves there, or they beat Alabama in the national championship game, or Nick Saban just outright won it, which is mind-boggling. And I don't think we are seeing a little bit more parity in college athletics now, and we do have NIL to thank for that. And in that aspect, that's a good thing, right? But we don't. College football right now is not something that we recognize, I think, just as a whole.
David, on another note, I just read. Excuse me. Go ahead.
No, we just need to. I'm telling you, college sports, but college football right now is a big, wide bowling alley. And we need to figure out a way to make it kids bowling. We need to get the bumpers. That's what we need to do. We don't have any bumpers.
That also restrict the coaches, because that's the argument that we see all the time, is that we're gonna put these restrictions on these kids, but the coaches don't have any regard for the kids when they chase the bag. So how do we say that to the kids? And I see both sides of that argument. I understand the argument that these coaches have worked their entire lives to build their career up to the point that they are, and they've earned the opportunity to chase that next big thing. I do, in theory, get that. But then you also look what happened, the domino effect of Nick Saban retiring and all the programs left without a head coach, and then the portal opening and all of those players. I mean, that created insanity. So is there a way that we can say, like, hey, coaches hiring and firing has to happen in these windows, unless it's something so egregious that the university doesn't have a choice, some kind of arrest or something like that. And then also put even more restrictions. Hey, you can transfer once while you are an undergrad. If you've graduated, you get that second grad school transfer or whatever, like what we used to have, how Florida ended up with Ryan Smith in 2006. Like, could we create some restrictions that kind of protect on both ends?
With the athletes, I think most people, and I'm very pro the athlete getting what they can, but I think a very fair transfer set of rules is every athlete gets one, and then if your head coach leaves, you get another.
I mean,
Okay?
I think
and then as Allie said, if you're a graduate, okay, and you still have eligibility left, sometimes you may need to leave because you actually want to pursue a master's in the place your alma mater doesn't provide it. So I do think once you graduate,
sometimes the alma mater wants the space too, if you finished your 4 years. So there's,
right. So I think everyone gets one. Then if your head coach leaves, you can leave. And then if you're a graduate and you still have eligibility left, you can go and do whatever you want.
yeah. I mean, I think that's just common sense, right? What is the running back that Florida had? I want to say he was originally at Miami and then he was at Florida. He just transferred to UCF like a year ago, but I just saw a thing saying he's no longer on UCF's roster. Like, those are the things we need to prevent.
Correct. The only thing I could think of when you were talking about coaches, Allie, I thought you were also talking about money. And the one thing I will say, if you want, I do think coaches' salaries, it'll take 10 or more years. But if the athletes become employees and now the schools and the athletic departments are having to fund the players, they're going to turn around and look at the coaches and the agents and go, we don't have as much money left for you guys. No offense. I mean, we don't.
Yeah, and I've never been one to be offended by coaches' salaries. I don't, I think that's something that the market dictates. But I think when you say these players are chasing money, well, coaches go to the next big job for money too. So it's
assistants also.
Yes. Say that again?
Assistants also. I mean, they're all chasing it.
Sure, they all are. And so to say like, oh my gosh, all they want to hear about is what our salary is going to be. Okay, well, when you coach for the Dolphins and Alabama called, what did you ask them? You asked them, okay, what are you going to do to lure me there? And it was money related. It wasn't like, hey, we're going to talk sweet to you 3 days a week. And we're going to give you this opportunity to really mold some men. It was, we're going to back this Brinks truck up to your house, if you agree to be our head coach. And Saban said, I'm in.
To make this hit closer to home, I thought, though, with what Nick said, if you believe it to be true. And Allie, you said it earlier. You believe when he talked about how time consuming the job is now and how much time you're spending on not only recruiting the future players, but on the time you're spending keeping your current players.
Oh, yeah.
I do think it works against Billy Napier's argument of him staying offensive coordinator and calling the plays. I think it's kind of like, Billy, this job has never been more demanding, and you're trying to do everything. Kirby's not trying to do everything. Nick didn't try to do everything.
Yeah.
Why are you trying to do everything?
Yeah.
Control. You know how coaches are. They want
Well,
control.
I mean, if you're gonna go 10-2,
Yeah, I know.
but
You're
not
right.
if you're gonna go 6-7.
There's
Yeah.
just not a way to create more time in the day. And their job has gotten so much more all encompassing, so much more time consuming with NIL that it is, you put another hat on your head, doesn't make a whole lot of sense in this era of college football.
Although everybody who knows him and knew, including Shane Matthews, said there's no way he's going to give up play calling. Now, he may have someone sort of be a offensive coordinator, but he's going to. They put the game plan in, and he'll on the headsets. He'll say, "Should we go with this or go with that?" The play caller is not exactly like what he used to be, like Spurrier. So I mean, it's a tough one. I hear what you're saying about the players, Allie, and I'm for them making money. But it's a little bit different with a coach and a job in terms of his opportunity and a young player who's been there, is 30 years old and expects to get paid $1 million a year. I don't know what the answer is, but shifting.
I agree. I can
Shifting.
see the
Go ahead.
differences. You can look at it from an 18-year-old kid who's going to say,
no, of course, he wants a Lamborghini. Yeah, I don't blame him. I'd want it too. But you have anyway. So the parents have to come from someplace else if they're not at home. I wanted to switch gears a second and get to what's happening in Gainesville now. And none of us have gotten to see practices, although I've seen some great videos. And I got kind of excited last week. And Ellie, I think I might have told you about this, David. And the guy I saw really impressed me. And impressed me beyond just another player. And I've talked to him this week. And, I grant you, you can shoot down this argument and say, oh, you're crazy. Oh, you know what you're talking about. Oh, no, this guy's got to have a defense and so on and so forth. Well, I get that, but I think there's also the rite of passage of a person who is seeing someone for the first time as you would see a great performer, singer, whatever you say. Well, wait a minute now. This guy's special. That guy right there is kind of special. And everything I saw about it, and I don't know anything about him other than the pictures and the video and what people are saying about him. And I know he's going to make some mistakes. But this looks like if he holds it together, to me, my instincts or my too intuitive, whatever it is, tell me this guy is the guy who could take you to the promised land. I really love the way this guy looks, the way he looks in the uniform, the way he throws, all the things I've read about him, how he's reacting to his tutoring. And I just think we're in for a special time. I know now I'm over my skis, so shoot me down, Ollie.
First of all, I've been on the Lagway bandwagon for months at this point, and I've had multiple conversations with him. I've had conversations with his high school coach, with his quarterback coach, which is dad. Like, he comes from such a great family. I think that they're so excited to be here. They are, all those people that say like, well, could he potentially start? Like, they want him brought along slowly. They love that he is getting to learn from Graham Mertz. But I will tell you, he's tied to Billy. So if Billy Napier's fired after this year, I would stake my house on the fact that DJ Lagway will no longer be in orange and blue. So for everybody that thinks that this is the guy that could lead you to the promised land, may require hanging on to Napier for a little bit longer for that to happen.
Which is another reason I hate to say the same thing every appearance. It's why the athletic director months ago needed to look everybody in the face and say, he is not going anywhere until the 2025 season is over unless you fire me. I'm just telling you that right now. Okay. So everybody can just relax. All of you people not donating money to the cause because you don't like them. Well, you're either going to have to make a decision because it's 2 more years minimum. All right. And then honestly, and just tell everybody, and I would do it for not just the fan base, but I would also do it. I mean, please, this is maybe the hardest schedule that It's historically difficult, okay, in a guy in the middle of a rebuild. Quite frankly, the athletic director has not done his coach any favors at all. None. He's made it extremely difficult on him having to play the schedules that he's had to play. All right. And so the least he could do is put his job on the line and say he's got 2 more years minimum. And the only way he doesn't is if you fire me. Okay. And
Well,
it's also a message about the recruit. Because if this guy is the future, if he is the next Tebow, then you might as well stake everything on him.
yeah. I mean, listen, we've talked about this ad nauseum, but the only thing that Florida does worse than, special teams and really clutch play calling is PR. They have failed at every turn to do Napier any favors from the PR department, in my opinion. And yes, they could have come out and said that. There's so many things Napier could have done along the way that would have brought fans along, made us feel better about where we are than he did. But the reality is what it is. He's coaching at least this year. I think the seat is very hot. We all need to see, it's not about the wins and losses so much as it's about how you won or how you lost. And we left 3 games on the table last year. Florida wins those 3 games. We are not sitting here having this conversation. That seat is not warm if you beat Arkansas, if you beat Florida State, if you, pull out some of these games, let's say the Utah game. I mean, Missouri. There is at least 3 games that Florida handed away, and we would not be having this conversation. But basically, from a booster standpoint, you can either throw money in to help Billy out, get some players. The spring transfer portal is going to open here in a few weeks, or you can throw that money to a buyout and to find a starting quarterback, because that's what's going to happen. You're spending the money either way, right?
Yeah, the money's, it's not Napier. See, I would look at a Bull Gator. I would say this is not about Billy Napier. All right, this is pay for play. You're supporting the Florida football program.
Right.
It doesn't matter who the
said,
coach is. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if Steve's the coach, if Urban's the coach, or Billy's the coach. This is the reality. Okay, so give the money. If you care this much, don't withhold it. We're only going to suck longer. Please, we need your money. Steve didn't need your money. Urban didn't need your money. We need it now.
Well, and that's, rooting for Napier to fail or withholding money so that Napier does fail is essentially rooting on a pilot to crash a plane that you're on. This is your program too. You want to see them succeed.
Good metaphor. I like that. Well, and personally, I'd like to see Billy stay through it. The question is, can he bear it? The Tamir term, most difficult schedule in college football history. If that's what it is, that's amazing. And I think Billy's a decent coach. The question is, how much patience do the Gators have, and how much money do they have? And Allie, you run with some of those people who give money. You know some of them, and they've already said they won't change. They've been asking Billy to get a new offensive coordinator. He kind of did and really didn't. And that's the thing about the way he addressed these. He kind of got a special teams guy, but didn't get one. And he, like David said, he didn't come out and say, well, here's what's going to happen. Here's who's doing this. It seemed like he was purposely vague.
Why won't Scott Strickland say he's going to be the coach for 2 more years minimum unless you fire me? That ends all the conversation. It does.
Well, David, there are some who think that could happen.
Ends all fine. But listen, if you're Scott Strickland, what are the odds?
Strickland gets fired. There's mutually assured destruction there.
Totally. Scott Strickland's not going to get to hire a third coach.
Yeah.
So you might as well put your job on the line, because it is.
Yeah, it is. Whether or not you stay, it is on the line. Yes.
And also, and then you come out and you bring out all the scenarios. Frank Beamer needed 6 years. Mike Krzyzewski had 3 awful years to start. And then look at, honestly, bring them all out and say, listen, I did him wrong. The schedules, we could have made it Cupcake City. We didn't, and made the appearance that this program was better than it is. We're doing it the right way. I'll stake my career on it. By the way, look at the men's basketball coach I just hired. Pretty good, huh? All right. And then listen, we know what we're doing here. We really do. Okay. And we're getting there and we're going to get there. We need a little more time than you want. Okay. And just say he's going to be the coach for 2 more years, no matter what, unless you fire me, and then walk off. That's it.
Well, it's hard to know. There's a lot of rumors going around about Scott Strickland right now. I'm not going to give voice to him, but we're just in the dark. Let me get to another subject. It's the same subject, but this week, Greg McElroy came out with something that kind of surprised me, Allie, a little bit. And I'll give McElroy credit for trying to find the silver lining in things. He came out and said, "Don't sleep on Florida." He said they have not shown improvement, but he said despite their recent struggles, McElroy's around there. Don't sleep on. Everyone's basically putting Florida to the ground. He said on Always College Football's program. He said they're saying they have no chance. I'm not picking them to go to the playoff. I'm not sitting here and saying keep an eye on Florida. I'm saying don't sleep on Florida. So the fact that he would have a sort of a sort of semi-positive take is a little surprising. But again, they need to kind of crawl out of this hole. And like we've all said, they got to win. First half of the schedule presents some opportunities for that. The Miami game is huge in that regard. And so we're just going to sit here and wait and see. But it feels like there could be a little crack there. Maybe there's a little sunshine coming through. Lord knows they need it because it's been a long winter.
Well, when you look at our schedule, I understand why looking at this schedule, we say it's the hardest schedule in college football. But when you really pick it apart, you look at you're getting Miami, who's breaking in a new quarterback. UCF is breaking in a new quarterback. Ole Miss is breaking in a new quarterback. Florida State is breaking in a new quarterback. I mean, going all the way down the list, there's, I want to say 7 teams that we play who will have a new quarterback. Texas A&M is going to be an entirely new roster when we play them. I mean, there is some opportunities here because there is some unknowns. A lot of these teams on this schedule, you play them last year, it's 100%, I'm calling it a loss. But they all have some uncertainty too. So these are huge names, right? And big programs with great coaches that we have on this. But some of this, we're just going to have to see how it plays out because I don't know that all of these teams will be quite as good as we think.
I agree with you. Yeah, it's tough to play the game. Let's talk a little basketball here, folks, and stay with me as long as you can if you got to go. I understand we started late, but interesting piece today on the Athletic about how the SEC decided to be good in basketball. That's what Nate Oates said. They just decided they're going to be good in basketball. David, much like 2004 and 5 and 6, they decided to be good in football. And you see what's happened now. Commissioner Sankey said when he started out, he said he think there were 3 teams that made the tournament when he first started out. Now they're going to have, 8, 7, whatever it is, and make the tournament, whatever it may be. And many people are saying it's the best conference in basketball, top to bottom. I don't know if it's true or not. But Sankey says of that day, he said, taking over in basketball, he said, we had 3 teams pick. That's my first year as commissioner. Thinking some changes might be needed. So he went out and hired Mike Giese and got the guys from the Big East, which, David, was a great run for a long time. And basketball began to change. And people got tired of saying, well, we're a football conference. Could you make a case for them, Allie, being a basketball conference now, too?
I mean, listen, I think Florida, LSU, and Kentucky would like a word. They've been good for 25 years at basketball or longer. But yeah, I mean, the SEC's good at everything. Look at gymnastics, look at softball, look at baseball, look at track and field, look at swimming. They dominate almost every major college sport. So I don't know that it's surprising that they're, also good at basketball.
Sankey spoke about it when he took over as commissioner that he not only hired Trent Giese, he hired somebody else to say, because SEC schools were losing out in RPI. They were losing should it be this school or an SEC school? They always took the other school as a borderline case. So they learned how to first not game the system, but just how can we schedule better where our RPIs were better. All right.
Mhm.
And then also he said, listen, you guys need to make a commitment to basketball and take a look, much like in football in the 2000s, and look at the coaches that got hired for football. Look at the coaches that got hired. Not all of them worked out, but look at the coaches that got hired by the SEC in the late 20 teens and now in the 2020. It was either the hotshot young guy, where not only did, Alabama hired their Billy Donovan, quite frankly. They went out and paid the money and made sure that Nate went there instead of going somewhere else. And they also brought in some established coaches. But if you think about it, between the population shift and the financial, what's the word I'm looking for? Dominance of the SEC, if they decide they're going to get serious about something, all right, they've got more good athletes around them than any other region in the country, and they got more money around them up until about 2 years ago than any other conference in the country. So if
Yeah.
they get serious about something, they should be really good at it.
Mhm.
Big
David,
12
you,
is
get,
still better than the SEC, I would argue, buddy. Big 12 basketball is still better
you think it's
than
better?
the SEC. It is. Now it'll
Talk
be
about them.
interesting. Oklahoma and Texas,
Yeah. Yeah.
leaving, and but I think they'll be
Right.
close. But Big 12, I think, still better than the SEC.
You probably so. David, Andy McIntosh, one of our contributors and one of our better callers and listeners, wants to know your take on how many SEC teams will be in the Sweet 16 of the tournament. And Al, you can jump in there too.
Could be as many as 5. I mean, quite frankly, I could see the Gators. I could see Alabama, Auburn. I could see Tennessee and Kentucky.
Mhm.
I mean, I really could, and I'm probably missing somebody. But it all depends on the draw. I'm concerned Alabama doesn't play any defense. There are times that the Gators could play a little better defense too. But I love the versatility that the Gators have. I really do.
Allie, Mississippi is an unknown quantity too. What they're going
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah, I mean Mississippi's good as well. I'm excited to see the conference tournament and how it plays out. That'll tell us, maybe a little bit about the resiliency of these teams down the stretch. But I think that if Florida plays Florida's game, Florida could be there. And I mean, there's going to be a handful of others. I think 4 is a conservative guess, right?
Yeah, 3 would be conservative, but I think I agree with you. 4 to 5. What do you guys think about this tandem of guards? Everybody's saying they might be the best in the history as a tandem at Florida. Certainly, both of them are all SEC. One was first, one was second. No doubt about it. They're phenomenal. But I'm going to tell you, these bigs they got, they're amazing. I'm so impressed how they attack the glass and play hard. And the big guys can shoot and handle, which is unusual for 7-footers, Allie. And I think these guys are only going to get better, especially Condon.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is, I guess Vanderbilt game aside, this has been a really fun team to kind of watch develop as the season went on. I think we lost some games early that you watched and you're like, oh, if they could just put it together, they can get over the hump. And then we kind of watched that transpire over the last few weeks, and a couple of roadblocks here and there. Vanderbilt, this team is coming together. This team is good. This has been exciting to watch, and I think that there are so many people that were really concerned about the Golden hire by how last season played out, and honestly, kind of also looking at it as kind of a whole. Like, look at Napier, he's not succeeding. Look at this, look at that. Strickland's just not good at hiring, but Golden has been a great hire for the Gators.
Amazing, really amazing.
I think if the Gators can win one game, they can win 3. I love the depth in the front court. I really do. They have no experience in these games that they're going to play next week. So I think, first game, they'll be a 6 or 7 seed. They'll be favored. You never know what the draw is going to be. There's a lot of dangerous teams out there, a lot of dangerous teams. But, they'll be an underdog in the second round if they get to it. But I think that, if they can win one, get that nerves, excitement, whatever it is, first time jitters, and get it out of their system. There are not many teams that they just walk on the floor against and go, oh, they're so much better than us. UConn, I think, is one. And quite frankly, I think Florida can play with anyone else in the country They really can, because I think they have some advantages even against Purdue. They'd have to rebound their off against Houston, but I think athletically they can play with Houston. UConn right now, I think, is the team. Their A game. Nobody beats UConn's A game. But otherwise, the tournament, I think, is wide open.
They're saying that a lot of the blue bloods won't be there at the end.
I totally disagree. I actually think we're going to be loaded with blue bloods week 2.
Kentucky and Villanova.
We're going to have a very no, not. I mean, I don't even know if Nova makes the tournament, but think about it. Carolina and Duke are both top 10 teams. UConn is a blue blood. Kansas, now they've got injury issues.
Make it.
But but they maybe make it to the Sweet 16, and then Kansas, Kentucky, probably the best Kentucky team since 2015. Buddy, I think this could be the perfect tournament. I think we as fans could get just an unbelievably exciting week 1 with enough upsets, and then I think we could have royalty all over the place week 2.
Interesting. You agree, Allie?
Yeah. I mean, my husband and I were having this conversation the other day, and he was saying, basketball, there's obviously such smaller rosters. You can see change from NIL faster in basketball than you could potentially in football. And so he was asking me, do I think that we're going to get a different tournament because of NIL? And I was like, honestly, no, we're not at all. We are going to get a tournament full of blue bloods in it at the end. The Elite Eight is going to be familiar to everybody. But I do think that that's kind of an interesting, way to look at NIL too, though, is how it affects or not how basketball has played out. And I don't know that we're seeing any, crazy team that just was able to buy their roster but has never been good before making a deep run,
Todd Golden did a pretty good job on his.
Say that again?
Todd Golden's done a pretty good job on his end.
Yeah, but
on the portal.
Florida is part of those blue bloods. I don't consider us I don't know. I mean, I know that there's obviously teams that have won a lot more titles than Florida, but it's not like Florida's some basketball hack.
No, they're not.
They've been far before NIL.
There you go. All right, guys, let me ask you about a tired subject. I'm saying tired because you're tired of it. I never get tired of it. This week, this guy came into prominence, and I'm going to ask you who he is, if you can guess who it is. Anybody take any shots?
No idea.
First name is Walter.
David, help us out here. I'm not getting anything.
He was Buddy's first editor. I don't know.
I covered him when he coached. No, it's Walter Camp, and you I doubt Alex ever heard of him. He was kind of the father of American football. He took the rules from rugby and made the rules, gave us 4 downs, etc. He coached at Yale, and then he went to Stanford. And the Walter Camp All-American team was the first All-American team. And he's coming
Camp, C-A-M-P. I thought you were saying Kent, K-E-N-T.
No, sorry, my pronunciation was bad. But I just want to say...
Why was he in the news this week?
Because of this, stand by. Well, just what he needs, another award. Where is he going to put all the... Oh, wait a minute. He has a whole restaurant full of awards. Coach Steve Spurrier joins the program now. Congratulations on the latest award, Walter Camp, by the way. Not many of us know who Walter Camp was, but you do, and you're going up there to accept an award, an unusual award, Steve. I think the first one of its kind.
It is a special award because it goes to people not necessarily involved in football or sports, but to a person that has sort of distinguished himself as doing real well in whatever profession or field he's in. So, they called me up about 6-7 months ago to see if I could be up to Hartford, Connecticut, and I said, sure. So anyway, I did a little study on Walter Camp. Not many of us know who that was, but he was the father of American football.
Yes,
a lot of people call him that.
Exactly.
Back in the day, John Heisman and Fielding Yost, the coach at Michigan, Alonzo Stagg, a lot of those guys were getting college football started. And what Walter Camp did, he wrote about 30 books on football, and he sort of set the ground rules for the game, like 4 downs. You get 4 downs to make 10 yards. and the scoring and all this, that, and the other. And he coached at Yale, went to Yale, coached at Yale, and he actually won 3 national championships there. I don't know who their opponents were, but he got 3
Harvard
of them.
and all those schools. All those
Yeah, he played, and then he went out and coached at Stanford later. His last 3 years, I think, in coaching was out there. So anyway, he's a Yale man, played and coached there, and they had this award named after him for a long time. At the end of the regular college season, they have a Walter Camp Back of the Year, and I was fortunate enough to win that one back in '66. So they're going to give me the Distinguished American Award this Saturday night.
How about the HBC and Distinguished American Award? And it's another award for Steve to put in his restaurant. He's got a bunch of them there. Walter Camp. He looks a little like David. Look at that. Look at David. That could be David right there. Another.
Come on, I got a full head of hair. Come on. I did have a stash for the longest time, but I got a full head of hair.
Oh, really? I don't remember you with a mustache. When did you have it? Well, I was in.
I had it all through the 80s, most of the 80s, and most of the 90s. So,
Allie, did your husband ever have a mustache, a beard?
Only when he wants to get under my skin does he let it grow out.
There you go. So I tried to grow one one time. It was kind of half red, half gray, and scraggly. It took me about 3 months to grow it. I thought, well, I've lost this battle.
Eric's only been able to grow one for about the last 5 years, so that's part of why.
There you go. So, well, guys, thanks for hanging in there tonight. There are nice comments of people who said thank you for hanging in. They enjoyed the show, and you guys always come through. You did tonight. I apologize for the technical difficulties. David, what's on your show the rest of the week?
This NFL free agency story, buddy's been kind of a big story this week. So we'll continue to, talk about that. The TPC gets underway tomorrow, and I love the madness. I love everything about it. I love the small conference tournaments that have just ended. Now the Power 6 conference tournaments are underway. Preview next week. So that's what we're talking. Love the madness.
I'm so glad the Players' Championship is back where it belongs again, and I love this time of year. I used to go up there and watch basketball and watch golf. And by the way, I'm picking Scheffler again this week. And
no one has ever repeated in the 50 years of the Players. No one's ever repeated.
Amazing. You think he'll win it, David?
No.
Who you like?
No. Really? Jeez. I don't know, to be honest with you, but it's
kind of hard right now with all that LIV stuff.
I'm betting against Scheffler. I do wish that the LIV golfers were in it. I wish Rahm and Joaquin Neiman and Koepka, and I do. Golf is not as interesting with the way it is right now. I hope they get it fixed. And once again, as we spent most of the show talking about, it's an argument over money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and of course, if they claim they're a major, which they try to claim they are, well, what did the majors do? They all let them in, Allie. So I don't know if you follow golf at all. You probably do a little bit here and there, but another one of our sports screwed up. Seems like that's happening a lot, David.
It's part of the reason, I don't know, Allie, if you agree, and I know we all want to go to bed, but I think part of the reason the NFL keeps growing in popularity is they have their together.
Yeah.
And there's no, chaos, if you will. It's just they have an 11-year TV media deal. Okay, everybody's making money, everybody's operating under the cap, and we got superstar quarterbacks in enough places.
And that's I mean, how many times have you heard somebody say, if I wanted to watch professional football, I'd watch the NFL? Because that is what that's what the college football is becoming, but they don't have the structure of the NFL, so it is chaos right now.
Right. It's the money without the structure, and it's the money and while losing what made college football, which is the rivalries and the angst. It's why this sport needs structure so quickly, so desperately, because we have to save the rivalries and the angst. We have to. Or else this is minor league football.
The struggles, the triumphs, that's, nobody struggles. They just transfer.
Quote, this is a good quote. Nobody struggles, they just transfer. Well, you guys are right. And I think this is what we're hearing, the cry out of frustration is that it's not just the kids getting the money; it's the whole game. Is a lot of people who don't like the way the game is being played and whatever. So a lot of unhappy people out there. That's what we do every Wednesday night, guys, on Sweet and
They haven't
Sour.
stopped watching, though. They haven't stopped. No, seriously, it's important.
No, it's true.
They haven't stopped watching yet. Okay.
Will
the
they?
problem is, well, I don't know.
Right now we're watching a train wreck. Nobody can look away.
You think?
Right. We've got places where people have stopped going to the games.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen evidence of that in the last 10 years. College football schools, struggling with attendance in certain times. But so far, people may be annoyed, but they're still going and they're still watching.
Yeah.
It's true. Hey, guys, thanks a lot. Great job tonight.
All right.
David Moulton
Allie.
and Allie, what's your next podcast? See you, David. What's your next podcast?
I've got a part 3 of an interview I did with Zach Alberverdi coming out probably tomorrow morning.
Well, you beat me to the draw. I'll get him on tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night. So there you go. For sure. Zach's a good man. I saw part of it already, and it's good. I told him to talk to him today. Thanks so much, Allie. Thanks, David. Talk to you guys next week. Hopefully our internet will be working better. Take care.
All right.
Good
Night.
Night. All right, folks, thanks for your patience tonight. Hanging in there, all of you. Loyal listeners and watchers. I want to get this in real fast for our sponsors and make sure that Mr. Meldon is among those. Jeffrey Meldon. Jeffrey, you do a show where you ask a lot of questions. I've got one for you right now, okay, regarding how do you know whether your case is being handled right and what to do about it. In medicine, you can get a second opinion if you're not satisfied with the doctor's opinion that they have. And do you have that in law? Can you do that with lawyers?
Yeah, buddy. As a matter of fact, we get quite a few calls from folks that have signed up, particularly with the big box law firms, that they do a hell of a good job of putting ads on TV. But after that, they don't really measure up to the way we try to create a client experience that's outstanding. And we're always willing to review a case and give a second opinion, just like with a doctor, because not all law firms are created equal.
I guess that's the normal thing. Just go to Meldon Law, Google it, and find out, and just give them a call. And like you say, if you come in, you get to see a Meldon. You don't get shuffled off to somebody else. You get to see a Meldon. All right, thanks very much, Meldon Law. Also want to remind you of our other sponsors tonight. So graciously provided me with this opportunity through this show, and you hear me talk about them every week. The loyalty of these people is amazing, and it's my pleasure to have them as partners on this program. One of them is Titan MRI, which is a company now that makes it possible for you to get MRIs on your terms as opposed to theirs. And they're located in Gainesville, but they're open basically whenever you want them to be open. North Central Florida's newest premier independent diagnostic testing. Excited to let you know they're now open and serving the greater Gainesville and North Central Florida area, focused on you, the patient, having a great customer service experience. So they can help you set your appointments at different times of the day, and you can make them on the same day and get a same day MRI. And you can, if you don't have insurance, no problem, cash your card is okay as well. So go to TitanMRI.com, find out why more and more people are going to TitanMRI.com for their needs. Also, I want to thank our folks at Rentstar. They've been with me a long time. They're great people. I know them personally. They've been very supportive of me and what I do in my shows. They're also great Gator fans. And they also thank you for being volunteers, because they want you to understand that you're the heart of what they do. They have these clinical trials, and they need you to participate in them, because it's about our health right here in this county, in this actually 4 or 5 county area. And they want you to come in and take part if you can. In some cases, you will be able to get compensated for time of travel. These clinical trials exist because they want to get new therapies to the public safely, and they would not exist without the commitment of you volunteers. So if you decide to participate, you can log on to redstar.net and find out more details. You might receive study-related medications and procedures at no charge. to you or your insurance. You may gain access to investigational medications and services and devices that are not otherwise available and receive compensation for time and travel. So check them out. They're good people. They have a good service. Renstar.net is the website. Renstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. Thank you so much, folks, for hanging in there tonight. Back tomorrow night, whether orange or blue blood. Don't miss it.